Welcome everyone to St. Mary Magdalene's Stations of the Cross. Today is Good Friday, and it's a tradition that we actually meditate on Jesus' suffering and death. So from the very earliest centuries of the Church, Christians have made pilgrimages to Jerusalem in order to retrace the step of Jesus, his suffering and his resurrection. They call it the Via Dolorosa, or the Way of Sorrow. From the 15th century onwards, Christians have picked up this practice prayerfully, and then this is how we evolve into the stations of today. There are 14 stations, and each represent an event in Jesus Christ's Passion. So let us prayerfully meditate on this day, the suffering and death of Jesus Christ. Let us pray. Almighty God, look graciously, we pray, on this your family, for whom our Lord Jesus Christ was willing to be betrayed and given into the hands of sinners, and to suffer death upon the cross, who now lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Jesus called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who want to lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life?" So they took Jesus, and carrying the cross by himself, they went out to what is called the place of the skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. Every time you come into this church, which hopefully we can all do again soon, you can see just how important the cross is. How? Well, the next time you're here, come in and look up. No, just a little higher. And you'll see this great, beautiful cross hanging above us all. And this cross and all the other crosses around this church remind us of Jesus and what happened to Jesus on the cross when he was crucified. Now, one of the most wonderful things that God has ever done for us is send Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was God's only Son, and he sent him to show us what God's love is like. And because one of the most precious of all of God's creation is you and me, when God sent Jesus, his only Son, to the world, he came to be just like you and me. And so that through Jesus, God could live a life just like yours and mine, he came in a body just like yours and mine. And so if we want to imagine what Jesus might have looked like, maybe we'll never know how tall he was, or maybe what size shoes he wore. But all we really need to do is just look in a mirror and remember that Jesus had a head just like yours, and arms and legs and a whole body just like yours and mine. And of course he did, because he was a human just like you and me. And because Jesus came to us in a body just like yours and mine, we can use our body to remember how important the cross is and how close Jesus is with us. And we can do that by making the sign of the cross on our own bodies. And I'm going to show you how. You take your two fingers like this, and you tap your forehead first, and then right there, right in the center of your torso, and then your two shoulders. And a way to remember this is to say, "May God be in my mind, and my heart, and my strength." And our strength comes from our arms, just like Jesus on the cross. His strength came in his arms. So that's why we use the shoulders for the strength. So may God be in my heart, my mind, my heart, and my strength. And this is a sign we can make whenever we want to remember Jesus and to remember the great and wonderful thing that happens on the cross for you and for me.
Station 3, Simon of Cyrene. Matthew chapter 10, verses 40 and 42, and Mark chapter 15, verse 21. Jesus, in his teaching, said, "Whosoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to those little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward." As Jesus grew weary carrying the cross, the soldiers compelled a passerby, one who was coming in from the country, to carry his cross. It was Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. So in this passage, Jesus is carrying his cross, and we can take a moment to think about that cross. Here, I have a very little cross. Over here in the Easter garden, we see some other very little crosses made of twigs. But if we were in the church right now, we could pick up the big, heavy wooden cross that's there and think about what it would be like to lift it for a second, for a minute, and then to walk with it, to carry it on your shoulders and walk towards Golgotha. And of course, Jesus was tired. Of course, he was exhausted and terrified and hurt and in pain. And so instead of helping him, the soldiers compelled Simon, and we meet Simon of Cyrene. Notice Simon of Cyrene wasn't a disciple. He didn't come to Jerusalem specifically to help Jesus. He wasn't connected to Jesus at all. He came to celebrate the Passover, an annual holiday, with loved ones. He was simply a witness, but he was pulled out of the crowd and called upon to help Jesus. When was a time that you've been called upon to help? Have you ever been a bystander to a situation where you were needed? Have you ever found yourself suddenly being the one who needed to speak out, maybe to act out, maybe to do something, maybe to help when no one else would? Not because it was a friend or family member, not because it was someone you knew, or even because it was your fault or you were connected, for no other reason than you were just there. We can all use Simon as an example and think about those moments when we are the bystander, the person in the crowd, where sometimes just being present in the face of great pain or suffering or great injustice is enough to stand up, speak out, and do something. We can also think a little bit about what carrying the cross means. We just learned about how we carry a cross within us and that we can make the sign to remember it. We can also think about what it means to carry a burden like Jesus was carrying a burden, and what it means to help other people who are carrying a burden. Sometimes it's really easy to help other people. Sometimes it can feel hard. Sometimes we have to give it our all. Whenever we help other people, whenever we help them with their burdens, we are always helping Jesus. So how can we explore this today, now on Good Friday with our 5 senses? Let's see what it's like to lift something heavy on our own and then to lift something heavy with other people. And we'll experience a little of what that is to help and to share burdens. Now, if you're like me, you don't have a heavy cross at home. You just have a little cross. But maybe you have something else heavy around the house. Maybe you lift weights, or maybe you have a heavy piece of furniture, or maybe a big bag of flour or some heavy cans. If you're in a house with other people, maybe with some other kids, how about if one person sits on a chair and then another person tries to lift it? Maybe one child tries to lift another child. See how hard that is. Then try all together to lift it. See what it's like when 2 or 3 or 4 people lift something heavy together. It becomes so much easier. Our burden becomes light when we work together. So try that now. Explore with your hands, with your own strength, and with strengths together this station. And take a moment as you go forward to think, how and when can I be like Simon of Cyrene? When can I be the bystander who reaches out to help the person who needs it and knows in doing so I am helping Jesus?
Station 4, Women of Jerusalem. A great number of people followed him, and among them were women who were beating their breasts and wailing for him. But Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and your children. For the days are surely coming when they will say, 'Blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if they do this when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?" What does this mean? Even if we want to help someone who is hurting or in need, sometimes we find we just are not able to. We might be too small, we might not have the resources or the ability to help. This was the situation the women of Jerusalem found themselves in. They couldn't stop people from hurting Jesus. There was nothing they could do but stand by him and weep. When we find ourselves in these situations, when we feel helpless, we are to remember that just being with another in that situation is a good thing. We can also always cry out to God and pray. Our tears are wet. You have salt water nearby. Feel the salt water. Our tears are sticky like salt water. God is bigger than we are and hears our prayers. Our tears and our prayers are important. Feel clean, holy water, what we use to come to God in prayer. We may run into troubling times where we don't understand and feel powerless, but we are to remember that God is powerful. This is not the end for Jesus, and our times of challenge are not the end of our stories either. We can cry in our sorrow, but remember that God hears our prayers and that God has promised that Jesus will return one day, and at that time he will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things will be gone forever. Revelations 21. Now is the time for you to take your salt water and touch it. What does it feel like? Does it feel sticky when you leave it on your skin and it dries up? Does it feel slimy or thick or clean? Taste the salt water. What do you taste? What do you experience? Does it taste very salty? Does it taste sweet? Think about what you experience when you touch and taste the salt water that reminds us of our tears. Another activity that you can do is to take your pieces of paper and either cut them into tear-like shapes or just use a regular piece of paper and write down some of the things that are too big for us to do right now or to help with on these pieces of paper or on our tears, or pieces of paper that are made into tears. These are our prayers to God.
Hi everyone. We are now at Station 5, the crucifixion. I'm going to start by reading Mark 15:22-32. Then they brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified him and divided his clothes among them, casting lots to decide what each should take. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. The inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." And with him they crucified 2 bandits, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "Aha! You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests, along with the scribes, were also mocking him among themselves and saying, "He saved others. He cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now, so that we may see and believe." Those who were crucified with him also taunted him. When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "Listen, he is calling for Elijah." And someone ran, filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink, saying, "Wait, let's see whether Elijah will come to take him down." Let's take a moment to think about Jesus on the cross. When he was on the cross, I read that someone filled a sponge with sour wine and brought it to his mouth. Now, if you have vinegar with you at home, with you now, it would be a good time to give it a smell and a taste so that you can taste something similar to what Jesus tasted in that moment of the crucifixion. Okay, so, not a good taste at all. I would also like you to remember that God became human in the person of Jesus so that Jesus could taste the bitterness of human life, experience it, and overcome it. Amen.
Then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks tumbled. Now, when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, he said, "Truly, this man was God's Son." When Jesus gave up his breath and died, there was an earthquake, and the curtain in the temple was torn in two. The temple curtain, or the veil, was a thick, heavy curtain that separated the holy place of the temple from the most holy place, also known as the Holy of Holies. This cloth would have been very tall as it adorned the inside of the temple. Only the high priest could go inside, and only once a year. The curtain was a physical barrier between humans and God. When Christ died, the veil was torn. Something like this. Listen for the sound. That's what the people would have heard when the veil of the temple was rent. And Jesus, the great high priest, opened the way for all people to have access to God through his sacrifice.
Station 7, Jesus' burial. There were also women looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, and Mary the mother of James the younger, and of Joseph and Salome. These used to follow him and provided for him when he was in Galilee. And there were many other women who had come up with him to Jerusalem. When evening had come, and since it was the day of preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, who was also himself waiting expectantly for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. And Pilate wondered if he were already dead, and summoning the centurion, he asked him whether he had been dead for some time. When he learned from the centurion that he was dead, he granted the body to Joseph. Then Joseph bought a linen cloth, and taking down the body, wrapped it in a linen cloth, and laid it in a tomb that had been hewn out of a rock. He then rolled a stone against the door of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where the body was laid. So Jesus died on the cross, and it was about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Because this is a day of preparation and before the day of Sabbath, which you cannot work at Sabbath, so they have to take down his body very quickly before sundown, which means they did not have enough time to do the correct or right preparation. That means washing the body, rubbing the body with spice and oil, wrap it properly, and then put it in the tomb. They did it all in a rush. So this is why on the day of the resurrection, the women again brought the spices because they wanted to do it properly. So today we just remember how Jesus died and how he didn't have a proper burial for us. But the good news is, 3 days later, he's resurrected. So this is our Easter hope.